Hey guys, it's Jeff here. I'm glad you guys are tuning in this week. You'll notice the video format's going to be a little bit different. Um, in the midst of everything going on with the racial tensions and just this burden to feel like we need to do more than just talk, we need to be a part of the solution. I felt that it was necessary for us to not just have this conversation for 1 week, and so I arranged a Zoom call with me and two of my really good friends to just talk about what this looks like, especially for you as college students. What does it look like for you to be a part of the solution? How do you educate yourself? How do you move from being on the sideline to being a part of the play? And so I want to encourage you guys, approach this with a humble heart. It's a longer video this week, and it'll be a longer video next week. Stay in tune for the 30 minutes plus that there's going to be there. There's a lot of good information, a lot of stuff for you guys to learn. But the most important thing is you don't walk away saying, okay, I watched the video, I'm good. But you walk away asking the Lord, what do I need to do now? How do I now be a part of the solution? How do I move from spectator to active participator in the solution? And so if you're struggling with that, I can connect you with either of the guys in the video, or you can come talk to me and we can walk through that process together. But don't let this be a passive watching of this video. Let it be active. Let it be something that changes the way that you approach, the way you live your life, because you're seeing people to your left and to your right that are hurting, that are broken. And the way that Jesus invaded their life, went to the marginalized, he calls you to do the same. In John 20:21, Jesus says, as the Father sent me, so I am sending you. And when we look at his life, we cannot dismiss that he went to those that were downcast. He went to those that were brokenhearted. He went to those that no one else would go to because they knew that they were hurting. And he asks us to do the same thing. And so I encourage you, listen with a open heart. Listen for what you can do to be a part of the solution. And then share it. Encourage your friends to be a part of the solution. And move beyond acknowledgement to action. So tune in this week and tune in next week. And we love you guys, and I hope this is an encouragement to you. Thanks.
Real, ain't we supposed to start a actual
We're
conversation or
supposed to
something?
start a conversation or something. Yeah, man, I appreciate both of you guys hopping on to this. This is really birthed out of kind of two things. One, moving through a process, repenting through that, and just wrestling with my own silence and what message that was conveying, not just to students in the college ministry, but also to my family and other people, that I'm friends with. And so walking through that process, and then just realizing that, I got a responsibility to shepherd the hearts of these college students and have these hard conversations. Like that's my role here, and I take it gladly. And in a season like this, with a heavy heart, to know that there's prayer for change to come. But in a season like this, we got to recognize the brokenness and the hurting around us, and step into the gaps where we can, And so I appreciate both of you guys hopping on. If you would, Mike, we'll start with you. Just kind of intro, kind of what you're doing now. And, you and I met when we were on staff. You're my first office mate. You and Carlos are my first office mate, So we would have conversations like this. Sometimes we might not get as much work as we should have got done because we're having healthy conversations like this about what do we need to do, how do we need to change, how do we pivot ourselves and position ourselves so we can see effective change in the future, But just tell people a little bit about yourself, kind of where you are now, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Sanders. So like Jeff was saying, I met Jeff a couple years ago. We were both on staff at Fielder. And about a year and a half ago, my wife and I relocated to the Austin, Texas area, and I'm back doing civil engineering work. So that's what my undergraduate degree is in civil engineering. And then I have a master's degree in theological studies as well from Southwestern Seminary. And so I have a weird story where I'm kind of in both worlds kind of at the same time. Yeah. So right now I'm doing civil engineering and not on staff at a church, but I am constantly reading and trying to educate myself more and more on theological things, historical theology. And I know a big thing for my heart, for me and my wife, is racial justice and racial reconciliation, and be able to be a voice in those conversations. I think we have a lot of diverse people groups that we speak into, coming from the church world, but also from corporate America as well. And so I want to be able to use my voice to be able to speak up for those who may not have a voice in those places. I actually had the regional leader at my company called me the other day to ask my opinion on certain things that were going on. So it's like, and God is using me right now, and I don't want to neglect that. So appreciate, Jeff, this opportunity just to hop on and talk with you. And I hope anything I say can be helpful and ultimately glorify God in the process. So.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. Thomas?
What's
man,
up?
Hey, it feels like forever, man, that you moved away. But as you guys know, Thomas is on staff with us and is now back in Indiana and following the call of the Lord in the midst of all the craziness happening, putting his yes on the table. So just kind of tell us maybe a little bit, some backstory, because I know some of our students know you, but they don't really know kind of a lot of your story. And then what it's been like, maybe just a brief summary of the journey to where you are right now.
So I was at Fielder for 4 years as a student pastor at the Arlington campus, aka the Pioneer campus. And so, what's crazy is, a year ago I was leading a mission trip to New York with some 9th and 10th graders. And even during that time, I felt like the Lord was up to something. I knew he was up to something good. And I kept asking God, reveal what you're kind of up to. And we had a guy prophesy over us in New York, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit just because I was like, yo, I don't even know this guy, and fast forward, the Lord just kind of working in my heart. And we're both from Indiana. We're both from the same town, Marion, Indiana. And we were here this past Christmas. And really, the Lord just started to break our hearts for our hometown people. I got a little brother who's 12, which is crazy because this time next year he would be in my ministry. And so we felt like the Lord was just kind of calling us back to our families, to minister to them, to love on them. But in the meantime, too, the Lord kind of put this dream on my heart to start a sports ministry, just because where we're from, we see a lot of athletes who don't make it to college. We see a lot of athletes who kind of drop out of school. We see a lot of athletes who have a lot of potential, but after high school, if they make it to graduation, they just kind of fizzle out. And so there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of drug abuse, there's a lot of suicide, depression, anxiety. So with all that said, we finally, we said, Lord, we'll go wherever you tell us to go, but we felt like the Lord was calling us back home. And so where it talks about the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, therefore pray to the Lord, who's the Lord of harvest, to send out his laborers. We finally heard from the Lord, and he said, I'm sending you guys back to your hometown. So we decided to follow that call, and who knew it would be a global pandemic when we would leave, but God is good. And so we trust in him, and here we are.
Man, I'm thankful for the wisdom that both of you guys bring, your experiences, and just the blessing they've been to me personally. And I know the blessing they're going to be to those that are able to tune in and listen to this. But I think right now for college students, there are some of them that are like, I saw there was a peaceful protest happening by UTA, and there's a lot of UTA students that had gathered for that, right? So I think there's like maybe two camps of college students. One's that's like, man, I'm getting out there. I'm going wherever it's at. I want to be a part of it. And you can maybe split that into two sub camps of I want to be a part of it because it's a quote unquote cool thing to be doing right now, or it's like genuinely like I think this is how my role should be. But I think you have those students that are willing to just kind of go and be a part of what's happening, and then you have other ones that are like contemplating like, is that effective? Like, what's the best use of my time? How do I really do something in the midst of this? And you might have a third camp of students that don't really know how to feel, and they're still processing, or they don't feel anything in this moment. But like specifically, I want to address like those students that are in that, what's really effective that I could be doing right now. So just from you guys, like, what would you say to college students that are saying, I don't know what I can do to effectively make change? What does that look like?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. And then we'll bring the expert in.
Yeah.
No, I think the biggest thing that you can do personally is to educate yourself first.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people have opinions. I think they have either whether it's through their experiences or just how they grew up. They already have a belief system. They already have a worldview on the world and just what they believe. And I would encourage you. It takes a humble person to actually dig in and actually digest. And honestly, I think that's what we're called to. This whole period sanctification, where we allow the Holy Spirit to work on our hearts, to get some things out of our hearts that, because the Bible talks about our hearts, it says our heart is desperately sick. Who can understand the heart? Well, Jesus can understand the heart. He's the one that mends the heart. He's the one that takes a broken heart and he restores it back to himself. And so I think the biggest thing that we can do with our hearts is understand our hearts are evil and understand that we can actually bring that to the Lord and allow the Lord to deconstruct some things in us so that he can bring, this beautiful, this thing called reconciliation in it. And so I think for us, we have to come to a place of, okay, Lord, teach me this humble heart. Okay, Lord, teach me. Break from my heart for what breaks yours. And we understand that racism breaks the Father's heart. And so any believer in Christ, those of us who said we love Jesus, understands that racism is a sin and that racism can never be eradicated until Jesus comes back. But Jesus wants to do something in my heart, and so be able to come to a place of saying, okay, Lord, teach me in humility, read books, educate yourself in the sense of understanding our history in America, understanding the Black history in America, understanding what's kind of going on. And I think through that, the Holy Spirit is going to teach you exactly what he needs to teach you.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really good, man. I really like the part about just humbling ourselves, right? God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And so when anyone wants to educate themselves, it's coming to the place from humility. It's saying, no, I don't know everything. And it's okay that I don't know everything. And there's some things that maybe there needs to be worked out of me to be able to come to a place of really understanding Black experience and all those things. And another thing I think about is as you educate yourself, don't think just because, man, you maybe have Black friends in your life or Black people in your life that's enough, right? I think true solidarity and truly understanding the plight and the struggle that Black people have gone through takes more than just being adjacent to Black people in your life, right? Don't settle for just having like this cheap diversity or this surface level understanding of diversity. If you really want to stand in solidarity, like Thomas is saying, read books, understand the Black experience, hear stories from other Black people that are in your life and seek to empathize with them and understand where they're coming from, and not just understand the areas of their life that bring struggle, but also understand areas of life that bring them joy. So I think about, Juneteenth is coming up, the day we celebrate that slaves in Texas were finally freed. And so, man, that's a big day of celebration, especially for Black Americans in Texas that are descendants of slaves like myself, where it's like, no, that's a time where we can choose to celebrate in joy with Black people, not just hear their stories of despair and hurt, but also celebrate them in the good times as well. So,
Mike, I think you bring up a good point. There's two things that cheap diversity, I think, is there are a lot of circles that would settle for that. And that's like, okay, we checked the box, we're good. We got someone of color at the table. All right, we're good. Let's move on. I look at my contacts and I got at least one Black friend, so I'm not a racist. I'm good, right? Like,
or we had a Black president, so everything is good.
Yeah, so everything's good. Let's move forward. We're good.
That ain't how it worked, man.
Yeah.
That ain't how it worked.
I think if I were to kind of quote you, you said that I understand I actually need that voice in my life to be a better husband, to be a better father, to be a better pastor, whatever my occupation is. I need those voices in my life because I understand that they fill a void that I don't currently have anyone speaking into. I think that's the common denominator to say, like, okay, I've moved beyond cheap diversity. Like, I actually have people that I value in my life that happen to look different from me, have different experiences than me, and I'm thankful for that. That starting there at the individual level, both of you guys have talked about that. At the individual level, then we start to see that kind of through the leading of the Holy Spirit. That starts to seep into the rest of the culture and the circles that you're involved in. But a lot of times, you know, and I'm guilty of this too. Like a lot of times we want to see the change at the bigger level, and then let me get behind that, as opposed to let's start with me. Let's talk high school to college, maybe some of those differences, and then specifically in college. And I don't so much necessarily am asking for examples of, you know, racism or anything like that, but just what it was like to be in college as a Black man and walking through that journey, you know. So if you guys want to kind of shed some light on that, because specifically in our ministry right now, we don't have really that voice, you know.
Yeah, I guess I can go first since Thomas went first on the last one. And so I have such a unique like experience in my life. I think even so, grow up, I got a big Black family. I got a big Black family, man. And for like, you know, from kindergarten through 8th grade, I went to public school in DeSoto, which is like 80% Black, man. So I grew up just around a lot of Black people. And then in high school, my mom decided it was time for me to get out of DeSoto and send me to private school. So I went to a private high school in North Dallas that was predominantly white. So it was only a few of us, Black kids there, Black guys. It was an all boys school. I went to all boys high school. And so, you know, we had the Black table at lunch, you know, where we would all sit together, the Hispanics sit over there, and then the rest of the cafeteria was white people, you know. So I had that experience growing up where I was like always around Black people. And then in high school, I was always around white people. And so I had those two different dynamics, like going into college. And so I grew up in the church, you know, both of my parents are strong believers, grew up in the church, was saved, was baptized, around 11 or 12 years old. So I always grew up in the church. I always believed, you know, I don't want to say I was always a believer, but I was always adjacent to the church, and my parents were always trying to teach me biblical values. And when I was saved, you know, in the church we were at, which was a predominantly Black church, I grew up in a Missionary Baptist church, which is a Black denomination. And so we didn't really have like a youth ministry or you know, a student ministry or anything. It was like we had Sunday school. So, you know, I was good on my knowledge and my facts of the Bible. But actually like growing and maturing in my faith, that didn't really happen. Like I was reading my Bible, but I didn't have anybody really discipling me at the time. You know, I think about all the good things that Fielder does with students, what Thomas has done. Like I didn't really have anybody like to shepherd me throughout my high school and stuff years. Went off to college, and I was kind of like trying to figure out my role, and then especially as far as church and stuff goes. So I went to LSU. So if anybody know LSU, it's a pretty big party school, right? Hey, them Tigers just won the national championship too. Don't forget about that either. But man, I was in the band. I was in a marching band at LSU. So again, it's a predominantly white institution. LSU is, you know, and so in the band, you know, it was only a few of us Black guys there. So again, I was in a situation where I was one of the few that was there. So I hopped around from different churches. I checked out the Black church down in LSU that a lot of the Black people were going to. There was a couple different student ministries, college ministries that I checked out my first couple of years, but never really had like solid grounding as far as the church goes. And it wasn't until like probably my junior or senior year where I really got like grounded in what church I was going to, and then what ministry I wanted to really get poured into by. And it was a predominantly white college ministry again. And so, but during that time, I think the Lord was really using it to allow me to grow, allow me to like understand what discipleship really meant, not just like head knowledge and believing and praying to God and all that stuff that I was already doing, but really like being active and growing in my faith. And I think my last 2 years of college, that really happened. And it was from like a predominantly white organization that I was a part of. Then graduating college, man, moved back to the Dallas area and was back at the predominantly Black church that I was in before I went to college, you know. So I have like all these dynamics and like where I've been in predominantly Black spaces and then predominantly white spaces, then back to predominantly Black spaces. And then it wasn't until maybe I got involved with my wife now and was at Fielder, a predominantly white church, where I really started like understanding the role that I might have to play as far as racial reconciliation and racial justice, you know, bringing my wife alongside of me in that. She's helped me a ton and allowing me to grow and to see things from her perspective as a Black woman and all the experiences and hardships that she has gone through. And that's really allowed me to be to the place where I am like really passionate about reading and learning and all that type of stuff. But like my college experience it was like different seeds that were being planted along the way, right? Without those seeds that were planted in college, right, I wouldn't have been like able to like think about getting involved in ministry, right? Because when I graduated college and going back to the predominantly Black church, I was wanting to implement like small groups and things like that I had in college that wasn't at the Black church that I was going to at the time. And so like those seeds allowed me to like start these small groups and stuff in a predominantly Black church. And then it translates over to Fielder and almost staff as a discipleship pastor. And now I'm learning and reading and understanding my role. And God has just used those seeds that were planted in college to get me to the place where I am today. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
There it is.
Good.
Yeah, so I would, just even hearing Mike's story, I'm trying to really just think through, my journey. If you can't tell, I'm light skinned.
Really?
Yeah. So my dad is Black and my mom's white. And I think for me, really just comes down to my experiences, my journey, honestly, just because I've always been in this weird space of, being mixed, of not being white enough to be white, not being Black enough to be Black. And so I've always kind of, I don't think I struggle with my identity, but I think if I can look back at my life, I think the one thing that the Lord has been forming in me would be identity. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because through my experiences, I've always gravitated towards Black people, always. And so it was easier for me to understand Black culture or to know Black culture. And it was harder for me to understand white culture. But with that being said, I think for me personally, one thing in the Black culture, especially when you're talking about systematic racism in this country, and you talk about mass incarceration and what that's done to a people group in our country, is eliminate Black fathers. Mm-hmm. And so for me, what's been a staple in my journey, in my life, and by God's grace, is I had a Black father.
Yeah.
And because I had a Black father, that in itself has put me on a journey of really understanding like Black culture. And I praise God for my dad, man. That's like my best friend. That's my pops. And but anyway, I say all to say, being a 3-sport athlete in high school, for me going to college, my dad only went like a year in college, and he just couldn't do it because he couldn't afford it, and he didn't understand fast flow and all those types of things that when it comes to college, that type of stuff. But for me, getting a baseball scholarship and going to play baseball at Indiana Tech was which was on the baseball team was predominantly white, but on the engineering side, it was definitely, because it's an engineering school, it's predominantly Black school. And so for me, I've always been in these spaces of jumping back and forth and just being in the middle. But it wasn't until my sophomore year in college where I came to know the Lord, where I truly understood my identity. I understood my identity in the Lord. I understood my identity as a person. And I'm comfortable being in both spaces. Like where I used to be uncomfortable being around all white people, like I'm not. Like I enjoy it. I enjoy my white side. I enjoy my Black side.
That's good.
And I don't allow people to box me in.
That's good.
To oh, you're Black or oh, you're white. No, I'm mixed, but I identify because I understand Black culture more. And I've had to work to understand white culture. I've had to work and humble myself to love white people. And I have the same thing for Black people. And so I say all to say that, through coming to know the Lord, I was studying criminal justice. I figured, I was going to be a cop or going to be a lawyer. I had an internship with a criminal defense team. And, I was trying to figure out, okay, man, am I going to be a lawyer? I'm going to be a cop. And when I came to know the Lord, I kind of saw the iffy side of it, you should say. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna walk by faith. And one door opens and I jump just by faith. I go to Indiana Wesleyan to graduate, which is a predominantly white school, Methodist school. And then by faith again, there's an opportunity to work at a sports ministry camp called KAA, which is predominantly Black. It's working with inner city kids, kids that come from rough background, from poverty, from injustice, all that type of stuff. And so for me, my heart has always been broken for the Black community. And so, through that, went to the Institute, Kanakuk Institute, which is predominantly white. And so Fielder found me through Maddie Smith, who's now Maddie Wong, and Matt Hunter calls me and asks me, when I would become the junior high pastor. And so that's kind of started my journey at Fielder, which is predominantly white, and is striving and is learning to try to become multi-ethnic. And so for me, I've always lived in both spaces, but I say that to say that I don't let people box me in to one space. And so, and that's allowed me to speak in different areas, you're right, because that's the influence that I have. And that's because by God's grace, he's allowed me to do it. So.
Yeah, man, one thing I think is interesting. Sorry, I know you're the moderator on this, Jeff.
Nah, man. Hey, you go for it, bro.
Man, one thing I think is interesting how both you and I have had these experiences in predominantly white spaces and predominantly Black spaces, and seeing how that's kind of molded us to be able to speak in different areas and to different people, to where we are now. And one thing I think that's interesting is that I think a lot of Black people probably have similar stories, and even mixed people have similar stories on being in kind of both worlds. But I don't think very many white people have that experience of kind of being in both worlds. They're kind of always in the predominantly white world and don't have the experiences of going into Black spaces and being the minority. Although we as Black people always find ourselves kind of in those situations. Mm-hmm. So when I think about college students, it's putting yourself out there, learning to be the minority sometimes, I think would help you understand the minority experience even better.
Mm-hmm.
That's really
more than just going on a mission trip.
Yeah.
You have to engulf yourself in it. It's you think about Jesus. Jesus infiltrated society when he stepped out of heaven and came to earth. And so even for us as believers, we have to learn to infiltrate. We have to learn to step in something. We have to be okay with being uncomfortable. We have to get used to being uncomfortable. You think moving in a global pandemic and having a life that's comfortable? Because it's not comfortable. Right? And faith never makes us to be comfortable. It makes us to be uncomfortable. So even when we talk about, what does reconciliation look like? What is learning more about, systemic racism in our country looks like, and what that means for a college student? It's man, am I going to step into spaces and educate myself and engulf myself in those spaces so I can just learn more and allow that person, because you value that person, allow that person your heart. So for sure.
Yeah.
It's good.
How do we how do they do that? How do college students do that in a way that doesn't come across offensively, right? So I think that may be some students I want to ask questions, right? And part of the answer is you don't need to ask all your questions to Black people. There's plenty of literature out there. There are plenty of videos for you to watch, for you to learn from, right? So own your own education. But I think there is an aspect of man, I do have these people in my life and I want to hear their experience. I want to know what they've walked through, and I want to know their perspective, even on the literature that I'm reading, of maybe how it's influenced them or what's, correlated with their life. So how do we do that in a way that isn't offensive, that's coming in humility?
So I'll go first this time. I think personally it's genuine relationships. I think that's the number one thing. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times we want to come in guns blazing, want to ask all these types of questions, and we don't even know these people. And so I think for me personally, what I've found is, man, when I seek to understand and not to just be heard, it's powerful. There's power and presence. And so when you're fully present and you are literally seeking just to build a relationship, because I want this person in my life, because this person makes me better. Like Mike talked about, a better husband, a better father, even for a college student, just a better person, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we have to come to a place of actually wanting friends, right? And we're not wanting anything from them except we just want their friendship. We want their support. And so I think as a college student, one of the things that you could do is to find a third space. One of the things that I loved when I was at Fielder is my third space was playing basketball at Dowdy Lynn. And the reason why is because all my hoopers was Black, and I enjoyed that space. So every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, I was there and I was hooping and I was building relationships. I got to know family members. I got to know their kids' names. I got to be able to speak in their life. I got to be able to speak into their kids' life. And it wasn't because, I'm mixed. It was because I literally would spend time with them, and I would hoop. And I didn't I had to earn that. Like, it wasn't just something where it was just like it was given to me. Oh, you're mixed. Oh, here you go. No, I actually had to earn that. I had to earn their love. I had to earn their respect. I had to earn the right to be heard. And that comes to a place of humility. And so, that didn't start taking off until at least a month that I was going consistently. And so I think for a college student, it's like, okay, you got to find a space where you're going to be consistent at, and that you're going to step in those spaces and you're just going to love them. So that'll be my encouragement to a college student.
Yeah, man. And I would piggyback on that and even, say, like, don't allow this to be just a trend, right? That you're trying to learn all these things about these Black people and stuff. No, like, do the work and like building relationships with people, and don't go ahead.
Also, that's the thing that scares me more than anything when we're talking about this like systemic racism. It's like it's becoming trendy. It's becoming politics. And I was just telling the fellas earlier, like, when did human life become politics?
Yeah.
So
when did things become trendy? Like, to a point, like, everybody's gonna just hop on the trend because it's cool, right? Because we do live in a social media age. It's like, okay, you're gonna hop on because this is the thing to talk about. And this is why, okay, we can finally, speak about these things because it's a trendy topic. And that's what I'm scared of, especially in, being a college student. We can fall in that trap quick.
Yeah. And think about the opportunity that you have at college is being around so many people. Like on campus at UTA, there's so many different people. That's like that affords you an opportunity that I don't have living in, being an adult and being married and going to work every day. Like, if you're a college student, you have such a great opportunity to just form relationships with people. And like what Thomas was saying, man, find that third place. Find those like commonalities that you want to share. Man, if you love playing basketball, man, start making relationships with people you play basketball with. If you like reading, join some book clubs and find some people that you like, and that's how you start developing those relationships. Don't come up to the first Black person you see on the street and say, tell me your story, because that ain't gonna fly, bro. We ain't a trend. We ain't just to make you feel better about yourself. We want to be in genuine relationships with people. And as you start to build those relationships, that's when you get to that place of understanding, because you start to see the person for who they really are and not just for who they are, like on the outside, right? Once you get to know these people and see them, and then you get to understand their stories, you hear about their experiences more, because now that trust has been built, that rapport has been built. And now you can really move from that place, like we were talking about earlier, from cheap diversity to true solidarity with the other community, because you built those relationships. So
it makes me think about, in James where it talks about faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
Like, one, it takes faith to step out and actually build these relationships, but it's also work.
Yeah.
You got to work at it. Like,
you got to work.
Not taking the easy way out, right? Like, and in a social media age, like, we're a culture that has forgotten how to make friends, right? Except for like, oh yeah, they followed me, I'll follow them back, right? So like, there's like double work you have to make. Like, one, like, remember how to make friends. It starts with a common place, right? So like both of you said, a third place, something that you already enjoy. Just make connections in that place that you already enjoy with people that don't look like you. Like, that's an easy place to start. But then, like, continue diving into that relationship. I think one of the easy things too is like saying, you cut yourself short, right? So you settle for that cheap diversity because you're like, man, yeah, I joined this book club. It's multi-ethnic. It's cool. We meet every Wednesday for an hour. It's dope. But like every other day of the week, like, you don't ever talk to those people. that's not really bringing value to your life, because those aren't actual relationships. They exist in a microcosm of your life for 1 hour. And I think it's expanding that to say, like, yeah, we go to book club together, but we also go grab food together. We also do this together. We also do that together, because you're actually my friend. Like, when I think about the people I want to hang out with, who's on that list? Do they all look like me?
Mm-hmm.
If they do, I haven't moved myself beyond cheap diversity.
Mm.
If they don't, I've made progress. I've moved forward. I think also, like, as a college student, like, recognizing that, like, there is more weight to the words you say than what culture tells you. There is more power in the choices that you make than what culture tells you, right? So, like what Mike was saying, at UTA, for example, incredibly diverse. Like, your choices at that university with the people that look like you can be powerful if you choose to spend time with people that don't look like you.
Mm.
And you can actually disciple your friends towards embracing other cultures and valuing other cultures by the choices you make.